All right, here we are in our week 3 review, getting ready for week 4. So the season's progressing along quite nicely. Um, and take a quick second to thank everybody for all the hard work they put in. I know it's everybody's, I'm sure, spending a lot of time in the rule books and the mechanics manual and on Huddle looking at film and having a lot of conversations with each other about things that they're seeing. And I appreciate that time and effort. So let's jump right in. We got a couple of little things to talk about, and then we're going to sort of piggyback off of last week where we talked about where our eyes would be looking on a regular scrimmage play. We're going to talk about a punt play here in just a little bit. But quick reminder: we're still seeing a lot of these illegal these shifts that turn into false starts. Okay. So, still being a lot of questions about this. It's kind of becoming a statewide issue. So, let's crack down on this. Let's pregame this with our officials. Let's pregame it with the head coaches if we think this is going to be an issue. And let's talk to them about how these linemen that are simulating the snap are going to be ruled a false start. Okay. And let's see if we can start doing this consistently. We probably can make this play go away, which would be a great thing to have happen. But here's an example again. This is a shift this is a simulation of the snap. It appears to also have the intent to draw the other team to encroach. Intent's hard to judge. Simulation of the snap is not. Okay. If you're moving in a way that looks as a lineman, if you're moving in a way that looks like you're pulling or pass setting, then you're simulating the snap. Just like if you were to step forward, that simulates the snap. We're all going to call that every time. And it's the same thing as if you step backward quickly or step to your right or left quickly. So watch this play right here. This is clearly a false start. Watch the lineman. 100% a false start. 100% every time. All right. So let's get in on that. Okay. Let's call it a false start. Let's be consistent about it. All right. In the email that came out, we talked about categories of holding, and we kind of broke that into subcategories of the restriction holds and then the takedown tackle holds. And within that subcategory, we have almost a new term we need to start throwing around, and that's the intentional takedown. And here's 2 examples of what we mean by the intentional takedown. All right, and this is a play where there is no effort to make a legal block. This is illegal from the snap, from the instant they make contact. The intent of the blocker is to not use legal blocking techniques in any kind of way. All right, and there's really 2 kinds, and we want to see this one first. If you watch the center on this play right here, okay, so we're going to watch the snapper center what he's going to do here. Just an instant throwdown. All right, it's his very first initial movement is just to throw the defender on the ground. All right, we need to get that every time. That's a flag anywhere, everywhere, and all the time. There is no attempt there to use any kind of legal blocking technique. This is a very, very undisciplined play by that blocker. All right, we would hope that he's not being coached to do that. If he is, then we need to correct it on the sideline. But if this is a very undisciplined and a very illegal move, let's watch it one more time. What he's going to do right at the snap, he's just going to immediately throw his opponent to the ground. That's 100% a hold. There is an argument to be made. I'm not telling you to call it this, but there's an argument to be made that it's unnecessary roughness because there's nothing in the rule book that allows you to take anybody except the ball carrier or someone who's pretending to be the ball carrier and just throw them on the ground. Another example that we're still seeing a lot of is if you watch this left tackle here, all right, is this jerk down move. And this is an intentional takedown. This is different from a grab and restrict where a player's trying to block legally. They grab, then they restrict, and somehow in the process they end up dragging the defender to the ground. That becomes a takedown. This is a whole nother level. This is an intentional illegal act. All right, and it needs to be flagged everywhere and all the time. So watch this left tackle and that jerk down move right there. That is just 100% illegal. There's no case where we're going to say that that's legal. All right, again, very undisciplined play, very illegal play. We need to get a flag on that. All right, now we're going to talk about punts. So we're going to circle back around to talking about eye progressions, eye discipline, our initial responsibilities, our zones. Last week we did a scrimmage play. This week we're going to talk about a punt. All right, so let's start with our referee. First thing, we want to be on the foot side, the kicking foot side. So we're going to pretend our referee's over here. All right, and our initial responsibilities, what we used to call keys, are not really any different here than they would be on a regular scrimmage play. And I say that because we have no reason to think this might not be a fake. So if we have a fake here, if we end up running an actual play instead of punting the ball, then we need eyes where they should normally be. We'll need eyes on eligible receivers. We need eyes on certain linemen, just like any other football play. And we're always anticipating on a kicking play, number one, that they're going to fake it. Number two, that the kick is going to be a bad kick. All right, that we're going to get some kind of kick that doesn't cross the line of scrimmage. The worst ones are those that hit beyond and bounce back, that gets blocked, that we have a bad snap. We're going to anticipate something going wrong here, okay? This is a good kick with a normal-looking return, so we're just going to talk about that right now. But always remember to anticipate the worst when these high school teams line up to kick the ball, okay? Bad things are likely to happen. All right, so our referee is going to be over here, and we're going to have – let's get our arrows pointing here. We're going to have our offside tackle. We're going to have our backs, okay? Yes, we're responsible for the kicker. We're responsible for making sure he's more than 10 yards, so we signal the umpire that the snapper's protected. But nothing's going to happen to this kicker for several seconds, okay? First thing we're going to have is a snap. We're going to check a legal snap. We're going to watch a quick block here. We're going to watch these backs as they block. As the defenders, the team R, progresses toward the kicker, then we start worrying about the safety of the kicker. But we don't just stand back here and stare at the kicker. We're going to officiate the action that's going to take place in front of the kicker. Now, the kicker is always in our rear view, our peripheral view. All right, we need to know if they're doing the rugby-style kick. Has he dropped the snap? Has he done something that makes it not obvious that he will kick the ball? Okay, we need to be aware of that because that's going to change our judgment on roughing the kicker. All right, but we need to be aware of what he's doing, but we got to officiate everything in front. All right. Once the kick has happened and it's clear that it's going downfield, then we just backside officiate. We don't pass players. We let everybody stay in front of us, and we will have the goal line if he breaks it. All right. And then if he breaks a long return, at some point we would pick up blocks in front of that returner as he gets close to the goal line. All right. Let's talk umpire. We'd like the umpire to be outside the tackles on this play, okay? Reason being, we can still see our linemen from this spot over here. When those linemen release downfield, it's a simple rotation to follow them down the field. Are some of them still going to go behind you? Yep, probably so, all right? But if we're standing in the middle, then at least half of the players are going to end up behind us. We have to rotate one way or the other, and we're going to end up with half the players behind us. If we're off to the side, we officiate this action here. We rotate and follow it down the field. At that point, we've kept at least most of the players in our view. All right, so we're going to watch these blocks. And the one thing that's tricky about these punts is that there's a lot of transitions that take place. There's really mostly two. We're going to start with initially the K team is blocking, R is defending. When the ball is kicked, they transition then to R is going to start blocking. K is going to become the defenders trying to get off the blocks. So that's something to recognize when you're officiating this contact here, is recognizing that initially, in this case, the white team is blocking. After a couple of seconds, when we hear that ball thump, all right, now we're not looking for the ball, but we'll hear it. We'll know it's been kicked. Now everybody switches. Red's going to start blocking, and white's going to start trying to get off the block. And that's a transition that we need to be aware of. The second thing that's going to happen is once everybody moves downfield, so if I'm an umpire and I'm viewing everybody move down the field, if there's a return, everybody's going to turn and start coming back to me, okay? So they're going to go past me, away from me, and then here they're going to come back. All right, so there's a lot of movement there. So we're transitioning again. Now we're transitioning in the direction that the play is flowing, Okay, so we have to be aware of that and recognize that everybody's going to be turning, and that's at that point during that return, we're going to have to be very conscious of blocking the back and blindside blocks as the flow of the play reverses itself. All right, let's talk about short wings. All right, at the pre-snap and initial after the snap, at the snap, and right after the snap, we're looking at the line of scrimmage. Okay, we're responsible for these backs back here. If we have a fake and they release out in the flats and that sort of thing, we got to know who they are and where they're going. All right, well, we're officiating the blocks on the line of scrimmage. When the kick is made, we've got to make sure that the kick crosses the line of scrimmage or ends beyond or behind the line of scrimmage. Remember, in high school football, it's about where the kick ends, not where it's been. So the kick can go beyond the line of scrimmage, bounce back behind the line of scrimmage, and that's a kick behind the line of scrimmage. That's different than in other levels, okay? So be aware of that. So we're officiating that line of scrimmage. We're watching the blocks. We know where the ball is relative to the line of scrimmage at all times. All right, the biggest thing we got to do after the ball is kicked and everybody's releasing is we've got our eyes have to follow them downfield, okay? Right in here, this first 20 yards or so is where a lot of illegal blocks take place. The umpire is going to see most of them, hopefully, but in just any case at all, somebody's going to be behind the umpire. It's hard to get the umpire in a position where nobody will be behind them. We're trying to get the umpire in a position where the minimum number of players are behind them, but there's always going to be somebody behind them, and that's where the short wing comes in. You've got to see these blocks. We're looking for the takedowns, the holds, below the waist, in the back, whatever happens through here. But your eyes are going to follow the flow of players down the field. All right. As far as movement goes, it's not a run. We don't run anywhere on a punt. Okay. We're going to slowly, deliberately move 5 to maybe 10 yards downfield in a slow, deliberate walk as our eyes are looking out here. Okay. We're slowly moving down that sideline. Okay. There's no reason to get down the field. We have other officials that will cover that area. Same thing on this side. Okay, so we're officiating the line of scrimmage from the snapper over. We're going to see these blocks. All right, we're going to know where the ball went, where the kick ended. If it's close to the line of scrimmage, we're going to have a strong opinion on that. And then our eyes are going to watch the flow of players going down the field. Okay, and then we're going to ourselves move 5, maybe 10 yards in a deliberate, slow walk and not go any further than that because there's no reason for us to be down the field further than that. Okay, you got to remember that in this return situation, the short wings, we're in reverse mechanics now because it's a change of possession play. So the short wings have the goal line. Okay, you don't have forward progress. There's no reason to be down there. You have goal line responsibility. You want to keep 20 to 30 yard cushion between you and that returner at all times. You have to remember that returner is probably the best athlete on their team. If he has the ball in his hand, he's coming to the goal line. He's going to beat you there if you don't have a good head start on him. So we need to be aware of that. All right, let's look at the deep three. All right, the book says to be at least 5 yards behind the returner. I'd say be 10. Okay, the further the better. The closer, the worse you're going to get your vision. Okay, so when it says be at least 5 yards, that's a minimum. So let's go 10. All right, there's no reason to be standing on top of these people. Okay, our back judge is going to have a conversation pre-snap with these returner. In this case, we have two. We'll talk to them about their fair catch signals. Okay, give them a heads up about that. Make sure they have good legal fair catch signals. All right, we're going to talk about that. Then the back judge is going to be primarily responsible anywhere between the numbers. Okay, anywhere between the numbers. You are not primarily, but solely responsible for whatever happens to the returner, and the ball. So fair catch, no fair catch, valid, invalid, that's you between the numbers. Kick catch interference, that's you between the numbers. Did he muff the kick? Did he catch it and then fumble it? Those type things, that's all you between the numbers. Was the kick first touched by K? Anywhere between the numbers, that's on the back judge. Anything that happens to the ball or the returner between the numbers, we want that to be the back judge. Okay? All right. Once the return starts, he's secured the ball, possession of the ball, and he's headed upfield, then you're just bringing up the rear, find the blocks out in front of him, officiate the blocks. You do not have forward progress. Do not chase that guy down the field like you're trying to spot the ball when he goes down. You're not doing that. Okay. We have wing officials who will spot the ball. All right. Deep wings. You have on a return that happens between the numbers. Any ball, if the ball stays between the numbers, the deep wings are going to be responsible for all the blocks. Now, this outside man's probably going to release. If he's lined up out here as a gunner, then he's probably definitely coming. That's going to be our primary responsibility because he's going to be the first one down there. All right. But whoever ends up being the blocks in front of that returner, that's who the deep wing needs to be responsible for. Okay. For any kick that stays between the numbers. All right. If the kick ends up outside the numbers, then those responsibilities are going to flip. Okay. Kick ends up outside the numbers, then that deep wing can handle the ball and a returner. There's probably not going to be a return. There might be. It's possible. Okay. Kick outside the numbers. But we need to be responsible for inbounds, out of bounds, and what happens to the ball and the returner when it gets close to the sideline. At that point, the back judge would then handle the blocks. All right. But normal situations, if they kick it down the middle of the field, the deep wings are going to handle the blocks. Okay. Keep your distance. Don't move forward. Stay back. Okay. I see a lot of deep wings that get way too close to the action on these punts. Keep yourself back. I also see a lot of deep all three, when a kick that's unreturned is just bouncing and rolling down the field. We're just watching the ball bounce and roll down the field. I've seen several incidences of that so far this year. Nothing to officiate on a ball rolling down a field. Okay. Find the players that are running into each other. All right. That's what we need to officiate. All right. Once the return starts, then everybody's focus goes to the lead blocks, the key blocks on the return, and the deep wings will have forward progress when he goes down. Okay. Just like a kickoff. All right. If you miss the forward progress spot by a yard here or there because you're focused on the blocks, nobody cares. Okay. We're not trying to get a first down here or whatever. If he returns at 16 yards and you give him 17 or 15, I promise you nobody will say a word. Okay. The only time we're going to be nitpicky on the spot on a kick return is when it gets near the goal line. That's why we have two short wings that'll be standing there waiting on it, and they can be very, very, very precise about the goal line. But out here in the open field, we need to worry about blockers. We're not going to stare at that runner running down the field. We need to be worried about blockers. Okay. Once the play is dead, then we need to make sure we dead ball officiate. Okay. The short wings can then move in and make sure players are behaving. Then it'll come on down, and the deep wing will let you know where the ball was down at, and we will check for flags. Referee, make sure as we're coming up the field, we're checking that there's no flags. We're holding up the chain crew until we know we're ready to switch. And at that point, we're going to flip everything down around and give possession to R coming back the other way. All right. So, got to know where our eyes are. Keep our feet still as possible. Okay. Have patient feet. All right. Move when you have to move with a purpose. But your eyes should be going from play to play, block to block, man to man throughout the play. And it's got to be the correct players in the correct area, or people will go unofficiated. And that's how we miss fouls. All right. Let's have a great week 4. Got a lot of big games. Looking forward to watching people work. If you have any questions, you can always let me know. Thanks.